The collapse of the beachhead defenses comes too fast for General Blockowitz to rush in reserves. Now he finds, with all the bridges down over the Rhone, his troops are divided into two uncoordinated forces, east and west of the river.
The Germans on the southern front knew that the Americans were advancing, and some were being pinned down by French resistance fighters. Whenever the Germans moved or tried to hide or tried to make a move, the French villagers of the resistance would inform the Americans where they were and what they were doing, and bombers would come over these the German units, so that the German army was splintered, and the resistance had a great deal of impact, not only as a fighting unit, but as an intelligence unit.
Success has come too quickly in the operation. The Germans have no cohesive plan of retreat, and the Allies have no practical plan of advance. Improvising, General Truscott determines to cut off the Germans and order his columns northwest to the Rhone River. Their objective is to wipe out enemy pockets of resistance. However, there's very little of the enemy left to fight. There are the occasional small holding forces. The Germans are leaving just enough men behind to hold off the Americans from catching up with them. This type of fighting is so easy, the men call it the Champagne Campaign.
Going through France, while we were doing the liberating, one town, a girl was getting a haircut for collaborating with the Germans, and she kept saying, "C'est pas vrai," it's not true. But the OSS had been operating in the area, and for all I know, this girl might have been helping them underground, thereby appearing to be collaborating, but not. And then she was doubly suffering.
The best German escape route is through a narrow gap north of the town of Montelimar. A 1,000-foot high ridge overlooks the pass. Truscott determines to take the ridge before the Germans get there. The first troops to reach the Montelimar area on August 21st attack the town instead of the all-important ridge. Thousands of Germans squeak through the gap. The battle around Montelimar continues for 7 days, with the Germans getting much of the worst of it.
By the time the bombing at Montelimar took place, the Germans were completely demoralized, and the bombing was the last straw. They headed for their vehicles, and they dropped their guns, because you couldn't get home on a gun, and you might get home on a vehicle.
Meanwhile, other American troops have encircled Toulon, while the French Maquis come out into the open to battle the Germans in Marseille. The French quickly round up German sympathizers and collaborators. August 23rd, the Maquis gained control of the city of Marseille. It is a time for joy and sorrow. The people who live here know the tide has finally turned.
The French were quite happy to see us. I have this photo of our half-track going through Nice, and the civilians all around us obviously happy. Civilians gave us the little tricolore, the tricolored circle that they were wearing and wanted us to wear.
After waiting 4 years for this moment, the Free French Army returns in victory. September 11th, both American and French columns now harass the Germans as they race towards their border. Patrols of the 7th Army and General Patton's 3rd Army make contact near the town of Châtillon, and the Allies regroup for the invasion of Germany. The shattered units of the German army limp back to their homeland in retreat.
It had to be bittersweet for them. After all, they were going back home, for one thing, but on the other hand, they were going back home as defeated troops. And they knew that the Allies were going to be attacking Germany and that the war was not over, but that Germany was certainly not likely to win at that point. And they knew all too well, they'd seen the size of the Allied forces, and they had seen the supplies and the air power, and so they knew that Germany was on its last legs.
In southern France, the Germans have suffered a humiliating defeat. Some die for what they believe, but more of them, upwards of 100,000, surrender. At long last, the German war machine is breaking down.
They knew that it was probably better to surrender to the Americans than to be sent to the Eastern Front against the Russians, who were merciless. So when they had a chance to surrender, it looked like a good deal to a lot of them, and they did. These were people who knew all too well what they were up against, and surrender was an attractive option.
One of the rewards for veterans of southern France is a place for R&R, the French Riviera town of Nice.
We'd have a room to sleep in. Food would be cooked and so forth, and other accommodations and facilities that we did not normally encounter. And so it was quite pleasant.
Ted Fleeser would return to the United States and find a career with the Rocketdyne division of Rockwell International. He has served his time on the battlefront.